Hi, I'm Paul Feiner.
I'm Pauline Mosley, and welcome.
And we have a really interesting show. Our guest is Karen Hoffman, and would you like to introduce her?
Certainly, thank you, Paul. So with us today is Miss Karen Hoffman. She's a social worker supervisor from Mac Angels. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what this organization is?
Sure.
And you can also explain what ALS is as well.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so Mac Angels has been around for about 20 years. The MAC stands for Mary Ann Collier. She was actually a philanthropist. And when she passed away, they wanted to, put her money to good use. And what happened was her daughter-in-law ended up with ALS. And when that occurred, they decided to form this foundation, Mac Angels. And so since then, they have been building, helping. We help families, we help patients, we do caregiver supports, we do resource finding, we'll do in-home visits, and then we also give grants for people for things that are not covered by insurance. So for instance, a ramp, modifications to a bathroom that people need with the wheelchairs. Some of the power wheelchairs are $20,000, and there's a big copay. So a lot of times families don't have that kind of money, so we try to give them grants to help with that as well.
Is ALS a disease that a lot of people, say in Greenburgh or Westchester, have? I know two people who died of it. But it's not like a disease where you see many people.
Right, it's considered a rare disease, but in that world, it doesn't feel like a rare disease. In Westchester, I personally have about 10 patients currently that know of us and we're working with. I am sure there are others out there that either don't know about us or haven't been referred. I work very closely with the ALS Association of Greater New York to help them also. One of their social workers in our area will send people our way for extra support and or resources and that kind of thing. So yes, it's not a well-known disease, but it's definitely here.
So if somebody has ALS and the family wants help, I guess they could go to the ALS Foundation, and then if they can't help with all their needs, then your organization could be a supplement.
Correct, and that's what we've tried to do with a lot of not-for-profits. There's a lot of small not-for-profits out there that are helping people with ALS in different areas, but they do different things. There's one, Hope Loves Company, which we work with a lot. They're in New Jersey. They do camps for kids whose family member has ALS. So there's a lot of associations that we have with various other not-for-profits, and we all work together in tandem to really just support the families. And that's what pretty much ALS has been doing that with us as well recently. So
before we forget, we need a contact information.
Oh, yes.
Do you have a website and phone numbers?
Yes, we do. Yes, and I would love for you to share it. It's an important resource. I think we really try to help people. It's a very difficult diseise. And so, the more support out there, the better for everybody.
And what's the phone numbers and website again?
So if you want, I have the website, which is macangels.org.
Okay.
I use my personal phone for all my patients. I'm happy to give that out if that's helpful.
If you want.
It's 914-629-9553. And that's for anybody who needs to reach me to, find out about us and, what we can help with.
I'm really surprised that a lot of insurances don't pay for the ramps and all these extras, because people who have ALS really need. If you don't have a ramp, you can't
get in your house
Yeah.
or out.
That's like ridiculous.
Yeah. There's also lifts. A lot of people go for what they call lifts. And it's oftentimes in the garage. So you can pull your car in or your van in, and it lifts the person up to get them into the door. All of those things are not covered.
What about like Hoyer lifts?
Hoyer lifts will be covered. ALS Association of Greater New York does have what they call a closet. And that is where they have a lot of those kinds of equipment that is covered, but also shares, you know. So like sometimes when somebody passes away, they donate something to the closet. And so that way they can get it without paying anything or even just a copay from the insurance company. So there are things available, and they always check the closet first. But a lot of these things are very specific. So even the wheelchairs can be very specific to the body shaping and what pieces they need on the wheelchairs, et cetera. The eye gaze, you know, there's just a lot of stuff involved.
It's sort of interesting because I always get calls from people, family members passed away, and they may have Hoyer lifts, they may have beds. You know, what are some of the things that people could donate if they don't need it anymore?
Well, so they can, I would contact the local chapter of ALS because they will put them in the closets. There's also another association that does collect equipment and will deliver it to people's homes, and I've used it for patients in the past. It's called AFYA, AFYA. And they're great because they have hospital beds, they have all kinds of things. Because if you need a specific diagnosis and an order to get a hospital bed. So for some people who may not qualify under Medicare or Medicaid for that hospital bed, AFYA may have a hospital bed that you can get for free.
That's great. Can you tell us how many clients or patients has your organization served?
I think we've served in the last, I would say in the last 4 years, 5 years, maybe 60, somewhere between 60 and 70, I believe.
Wow. So once a client engages with your organization, they're really with you for life, right? Pretty much.
Right. We try to continue to walk down that journey with them.
That's wonderful.
And there's a lot of things that we can do to help them. You know, planning is really important. Understanding goals of care. You know, what are their goals? Understanding that at a certain point, if they no longer want to, if they don't want to get a trach because they're having trouble breathing, or they don't want to get a PEG tube for feeding because they don't want to deal with that, you know, then we have to help guide them to hospice. What does that mean? What does that look like? So we try to really carry them along.
What got you involved?
It's so interesting because I've had ALS patients in the past. I mean, I've always done palliative care, I've done hospice care, I've always worked in geriatrics. But I was saying this earlier, how I, you know, left my job and a friend of mine called and said, I found something for you. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure I wanted to deal with it because though I've had ALS patients in the past, I've also had other kinds of patients. And so sometimes it's kind of like a nice mix of, you know, clients, and this was just ALS, and that's a lot. But I will say I absolutely love it. And I feel that we really, you know, try to be at the heart of helping them. My other social worker that works with me, Angie, she works in Long Island and Queens and part of the Bronx and New York City, and she is also bilingual, which is super helpful. And we just feel very strongly about, you know, the compassion for these people that really struggle.
The benefit is you're really helping somebody who really needs it. The negative, it's definitely depressing. And,
it can be hard.
You know, I would definitely not be able to, you know, handle it. How, you know, you're smiling, and how is it that, you know, what are some of the qualities for somebody who may want to go into the field that's necessary, because this is not a field for everybody.
It's not, and it is hard. And there are days that you leave a family, or I had a family that I went into, they had no idea, they had just been diagnosed. They called me in to ask me questions. She didn't even know it was incurable. That was one of the toughest situations, because we rely on the doctors to kind of give them the heads up of the disease, and then we'll come in and help carry them through. And in this case, I was kind of asked to tell her about the disease, explain what it is. It was really hard.
What's the lifespan of somebody who's diagnosed?
Generally, it's 2 to 5 years. We have patients that are 7, 8 years out and still eating and talking. So it's definitely very individual.
And is there like medical advances, or right now not that much progress?
Not much progress. I mean, they've been working really hard. I mean, they've come out with, it was just in the paper, there was a medication, Relivio, I believe is what it was called. And they thought it was one of these big medications that was really going to help slow the progression of the disease. What they found after all the trials was that it really had not much effect. However, what I would say is, because ALS is so individual, it may help some people, but not everybody. And I think when they look at these trials, they're, obviously they want to see a mass, positive that it worked. So I'm not sure if they're taking it off the market. They're still trying. I mean, there's a lot of research in this, but they're just not getting very far.
So when I say we, the community that interacts with this subpopulation, what is some advice you can give us as to what questions we should ask? Like, if suppose a patient like this comes into a senior center or comes into a child care and there are other people around, what are questions, or how should we respond in a positive way when we see someone with this disease? Is it an appropriate question to say, how are you doing? Or is that really not a good question because, they know, maybe as a person be ignorant, we don't know that this is a terminal disease, or we don't really know what they're going. So how can we as the public be more aware and sensitive and ask appropriate questions that are not offensive? Could you educate us on that?
I mean, I would say from what my knowledge is from the people that I work with, they want to be treated normally. They want to be treated as a normal human being. Just because they're in a wheelchair doesn't mean that they're infirmed in their mind in any way. And so a lot of times they don't like people looking down on them. They don't. I mean, what I will say is sometimes they also don't always want to be having you look down, or it's better if you can get in front of them and get to their level, because it is hard when they can't move their head to see you and you're talking to them. They feel like they're, lowered, so to speak. But they do want to be treated normally. But if you, squat down and have a one-on-one with them, like we are, that is what I think most of them would say they would want. For the
people who are diagnosed with ALS, are some younger people, or
it's a wide range. I've had someone in her 40s. I actually currently have a lot of people in their 60s and 70s, which is interesting. I don't know why. It just seems like that's the group right now. I was saying earlier that there was a girl that was 19. We ended up we haven't yet worked with her. They never responded after they reached out. We reached back. So I don't know where they are. Yeah, it's a wide range.
And also, is it hereditary?
There is a very rare portion of ALS that is hereditary. It's a very small percentage. It's a special type of ALS. But generally speaking, no.
What about, male or female? Is ALS found more in, one or the other?
Usually more in males than females. But I currently have more females right now than males. So, but that's just overall. But yeah, they say it tends to be more in male than female. I'm not sure it's a big difference.
And what about clusters? Do you find ALS in like different, if you're in an area, will you have a whole bunch of patients in one area, or have people ever brought that up?
I know, it's kind of like where they have those cancer clusters and all of that. I am not aware of any clusters. And I would say a lot of my people are very spread out. So I'm not sure that there's any relationship to environment. At least nobody's seen it or have spoken about it yet.
So does your organization bring them together, or you work with them individually? Like, can you explain what are some of the services and how do the services work?
Sure. So I'll give you an example of somebody new coming to us. They found our website on online, and they go, "Oh, I could use this." They reach out. I reach out to them if they're in my catchment area, and I just introduce myself. I usually, will phone them and just say, hey, thank you for reaching out. We're here to help. How can we help you? And sometimes they're like, I don't even know where to start. And I'll say, so let's just talk. I usually just say, tell me what's going on. How are you doing? And then once we kind of get through there, then I explain what I can do for them. So, wow, it sounds like you really need some financial help. You need a ramp or whatever. Or, hey, it sounds like you're really overwhelmed. Let's talk about that. There's a lot of emotional support and fear.
But you mentioned that you're having a fundraiser.
Yes.
And could you tell us about that?
Sure. So,
unless you don't want to talk about it.
No, I want to talk about it. Please come. Yes, we're doing a fundraiser on May 2nd at Dunwoody Golf Club in Yonkers from 6 to 9. It's $100. It's going to be food, wine, beer, a ton of raffles, and I mean great raffles. Like we have diamond necklaces, we have like all kinds, we have sports memorabilia signed by people. We have a lot of things. So we really want people to come out, encourage people to come out. And if you go on our website and you see...
And what's the website again?
macangels.org, you will see where to sign up. And if you use the, I think it's Mac Angels is the secret code, or band fan, you get a discount.
Oh, that's good. I was sort of thinking, one of the problems with not-for-profits and charities is that people who basically give are people who have been impacted personally.
Correct.
Do you find that it's difficult to outreach, and get support from people who don't have family members or friends with ALS?
Yes. Well, ALS isn't known to a lot of people, I mean, people know Lou Gehrig and they know it's Lou Gehrig's disease, but there are a lot of people out there like, oh, well, what is it? Isn't that disease that affects your ability to walk? And, they don't really understand what it is. And so it's kind of twofold of, yes, it's hard to get the word out because, number one, people don't want to talk about it. It's scary.
It is.
It's a scary disease. You're a prisoner in your own body. It's very difficult to navigate. And so, I'm out there telling everybody, hey, please come to this ALS fundraiser. And they're like, oh, that doesn't sound like fun. And I'm like, no, you're helping us help them. But it has been difficult getting the word out, for sure. I mean, we were known a little bit better up here. But now, we're trying to build back up.
Yeah, I remember my wife, she worked in a law firm a number of years ago, and one of the partners, who was probably in his 40s, had ALS, and he, when I had met him, he was healthy looking, he was young, very, very smart, and it's just a really devastating illness, and people should realize that they may be healthy today, and you never know what is going to happen, tomorrow. And if this, if you donate and if you help support efforts, it could be you at some point, or it could be a family member, and what you're doing could make a difference in somebody's life. It's little things, like you said. If somebody could basically go outside because there's a ramp, that's a major quality of life, improvement. So I think that's good. Do people, if somebody goes to a doctor and there's a motor neuron disease, do you recommend getting second opinions? And
everybody should get a second opinion.
And basically, could sometimes people be diagnosed with having ALS when they really don't have it?
Yes. I mean, I would say it's probably super rare. Most people are actually diagnosed with something else, and then they find out it was really ALS. But I would always recommend a second opinion. It's a long process getting that diagnosis, actually, because you feel little things going on. So it could be like a year from the original actual onset of weird things happening to your body before you realize, wow, something's really going on here. You've already lost that year without even knowing, you know, before you go to the doctor and go to the neurologist and they have to do all the tests. So it's a process.
What are some of the signs or symptoms?
Yeah, I'm a hypochondriac, so now I'm going to...
What are some of the
We all are when we work with people all the time. It's like, oh, I got a twinge in my arm.
Yeah,
like,
Yeah, so what are some of the signs? And then by next week, I'll be hysterical.
So there are different types. So one is a bulbar presentation. That is when you begin to have speech, swallowing issues. Like you'll start to notice that your voice is changing. It's harder to swallow things. You're getting a little drooly. Like things are happening from the top down.
Okay.
So you lose function of your limbs later, and more so the function, like I said, top down. So that includes breathing. You know, it's all of the motor neurons from your brain that are telling the muscles to work, you know, are no longer telling them to work. So everything begins to shut down. So, you know, there's definitely a real issue there. And when people with bulbar presentation, oftentimes they get a peg tube in their stomach for feeding because it can move faster and they lose a lot of weight. And so a lot of times you just want to feed the muscles as much as you can with protein. So a lot of people will get a tube to keep them going. And if you start to have breathing problems, you know, they will put a trach in. And again, those are really hard things to do and they're hard to accept and you can choose not to, you know. So those are some of the things that we always help discuss as we go. The other presentation is what they call limb presentations. So it's usually either the legs or the arms that start to fail. People trip a lot, you know, they're like, I can't seem to stop tripping. Like, why does my foot go to bed, you know, to sleep and like, can't get it to work. And that's also a different trajectory. Bulbar presentation tends to not last as long as limb onset. But again, that can be very individual.
Right.
So it's hard to say. I mean, there are people that I know that, like I said, 7 to 10 years out still, you know, chugging along. So while it's 2 to 5 years, generally, it is very variable and individual.
And is there like any, you know, do you know people who have ALS who seem to enjoy their quality of life for a portion of the ALS?
They do. They try to. You know, one of the things that we're fighting right now for somebody is getting a van because, you know, they want to drive around. They love the sights. Getting them a van where their partner can drive them around, all around the area that he loves to look at, the trees changing and all of that. You know, you don't realize how difficult these things are.
So do you feel that if a family member has ALS, that, say, just taking them out on a stroll, is that an important quality of life?
Very important quality of life. People like to go to the store. People like to go out to dinner. If they're able to swallow, they want to enjoy social life, just like you and I do.
Or sports.
Or sports. Go see their children play.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I think there's a lot, people, you know, it's obviously very hard to accept, and that's a process, but they also want to have some quality of life.
Well, that's interesting because I know my mother's like almost 100 and she fell like about 2 years ago, and like every day I take her like on a 1 hour stroll like around her house. And she really enjoys it.
Yeah, of course.
And you know, you know, I sort of feel that. So you know, I notice that these are like little quality of life.
Absolutely.
Things. Any other suggestions for family members? You know, how you could make somebody enjoy their life.
I think a lot of it is, you know, being present. I mean, the caregivers are exhausted.
Yeah.
Neighbors, friends, family, come help them because it's a huge undertaking. And it's expensive to hire somebody, so a lot of people do this on their own.
Since you're in the field, I know that caregiver, it's very, very difficult.
Yes.
It's expensive.
Very.
You know, what could we do in government, you know, at any level, to improve, working conditions of caregivers. Yeah, it seems like it's hard to find a good caregiver, and you know, sometimes if a family member is not around, the caregivers could be on their iPhone. You're not really paying
Right.
that much attention.
Right.
So, what advice would you have for somebody, you know, who has a caregiver? What could they do to make their life, the caregiver, do more?
Well, that's hard.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you, because that is, a lot of people complain about that. But what I would say is we need to train our caregivers. You know, training is really important, because your regular home health aide knows how to toilet, how to change, how to bathe, but they don't know treatment of trach, you know, suctioning and making sure the tube is okay, and all of these other pieces that go along with it. And also, a lot of people are very stiff, so trying to move them, how to move them, training is very important.
And it's really interesting when somebody is in a wheelchair, if they don't move, if you don't exercise their limbs, they get very, very stiff. And it could be within hours.
Right, right.
So it really
and
is.
you can't really do that with, I mean, there is physical therapy for people with ALS, but I would never say do something unless that physical therapist tells you what to do, because it could cause pain. And you just want to make sure you follow their directives.
Yeah. So before we close, could you give us the website and tell us again about the fundraiser?
Yes.
Sure. The fundraiser is on May 2nd, 6 to 9 at Dunwoody. Please come. Lots of fun. You'll have a great time. A great band is playing. It'll be a lot of fun. I welcome all of you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that is great. And again, you mentioned that you work with other organizations that deal with ALS.
Correct.
Like which ones?
So we work with Hope Loves Company. We work with Bridging Voices. Obviously, the ALS of Greater New York. There's a bunch, and I probably should have them all in my brain at one time, but I don't.
Well, it's really great that there's people like you and your organization that are helping people who are in need of help. And I think this is a really great service that you're doing, and I really admire you for you know, caring about people who are less fortunate, and you know, basically overcoming the difficulties and being just depressed.
Absolutely.
You know, it really takes a certain person to do what you're doing.
No, thank you, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you
for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's
It's been
great.
Very
So,
informative.
so you know, good luck, and you know, I hope those who are watching this program will support those who need the help.
Thank you.
Thank you.